what we're going to try to accomplish here, I'll show in a moment. I'll bring up my screen share and give you a dose of my messy desktop. Get that out of the way. Guess it's time to close email. Where the hell is my document? Oh, good. Ready for Daniel to come, was I? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Here we are, along with quick tips bandwidth. So this is only supposed to take a half hour, but we've already wasted 10 minutes, right?
I'm sure it'll be fast.
So, you know us, tell us any particular experiences that you have had, either faux pas or things you learned in the new normal as far as bandwidth is concerned.
So one of the things that I've seen and that I think students have often learned is that when they need to interact virtually like this, often it's difficult to have both a camera on, possibly even an image showing, I believe, and then also actually speak through their microphone to have a verbal interaction. Other times, they even revert to having to only do typing for, in the chats. So that's one thing that I've definitely encountered. I'm sure some students may have even found issues with, watching videos on occasion. So, yeah.
And you've got a fair amount in your courses.
Sometimes I do with pandemic conditions, since I teach my labs on ground. I really just don't like the idea of trying to do them virtual. I don't think for something like chemistry, it gives them what they need as a virtual experience. They have to really be hands-on to play with glassware, and it's unfortunately the only way that you can really become adept at doing those things. I mean, I could see it like if there were like some virtual way for them to use some kind of machines that would actually go and pick up glassware and mix things together so that they could see that and they're the ones directing it. Oh, cool, great, but meh. Otherwise, no.
Well, you are certainly in a fairly large category of folks that would love to figure out a way to turn their labs virtual in some way with the same experience / results from it.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that are working at that feverishly.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
and that's actually another. Yeah, that's actually another bandwidth type thing too.
Sure.
I did look
Absolutely.
at some of those virtual lab things, and I just noticed that they were using up a lot of computing power.
Right.
So not every student would really have a good system to be able to use those either. So that's been my experience anyway.
Some of the items I want to put down here that we run into regarding using bandwidth. Just throwing that in there. I had a thought, but then since I started writing, of course, that thought went out of my head because I'm a guy, I can only do one thing at a time. So without further ado, let me just, I don't know exactly what your knowledge is about the technicalities of, in this case, Wi-Fi, what we're going to talk about here, but let me show you this particular video. Got a couple of them to show. But before we do that, we got the funny one. I think you may have seen this. So if you've seen this, you can stop.
You might need to optimize sound sharing, Joe.
Sorry about that. Let me do that.
No worries.
Thanks for saying so. Where am I? Share computer center. Thank
you. Hey, Paul. Thanks for being here on time. Paul? Hey, Paul, can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Tyler.
Sorry I'm late. Having a hard time connecting.
1 second. Paul's having a sound issue.
I can't hear you. Try adjusting your output settings.
Can you hear me?
It's the gear icon.
Tyler, are you on hotel Wi-Fi?
Yeah, why?
Never mind, I got it. I just had to change a few settings.
Great. Maybe we can get started then. Oh, great.
I think your mic is your speakers.
My mic?
Do you have headphones?
You want me to put them on?
No, I want you to smell them. No, I want you to put them on. Hey, Beth.
Hey everyone, sorry I'm late. I had to download a new version of the platform.
You should plan extra time for the updates. There's pretty much one every time.
Sounds like someone just joined.
Hey guys, it's John. I had to call in. I'm stuck in traffic. Have I missed anything yet?
No, it would have been nice for you to join the rest of us, but we'll see you when you get home. All right, while everyone is here, finally, Tyler, do you have that financial report?
Well, it's been the last few weeks updating our books, and I got some great news for you. Schedule from this point last year. We had a great Q1.
We lost Tyler, I think.
Am I frozen?
Hey, Trip, I think we lost Tyler.
Yeah, I know, we lost Tyler.
Hey guys, it sounded like Tyler was cutting out.
We know, John. All right, while we wait on Tyler, why don't we go over all of the reports from Beth, are you with us?
Oh yeah.
Okay, everyone, I know some of you have to leave soon, but I just wanted to go over a couple of the queries before. Okay, excuse me. My wife's out of town this week. I'm so sorry. Okay, you just spilt grape juice on the carpet. Daddy is in a meeting. Tyler, can you go over the numbers one more time, please?
I thought Beth had an adjustment. Hey, Beth.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, that's my iTunes.
Hey guys, hang on. I'm gonna join in. Hey, what platform are you guys on? Skype? FaceTime?
It's in the invite.
Oh, never mind. I see it. It's right there in the invite.
Okay, now I can see everybody.
Let's reschedule and let's just do a regular old conference call, okay? Paul, can you have David send out the 9-digit passcode?
I heard you.
Yeah, he's been here the whole time.
All right, everybody. I'll see you later.
So had you not seen that one, Daniel?
I had not seen that one.
Oh, okay. I'm glad that already showed it then. I think it's pretty funny because that's obviously a little bit more of a work organizational setting and everything, and it's just video conferencing, but it's stuff that can happen because of bandwidth and a few other things thrown in there, of course, right? And who knows, maybe you've seen some of that when you're trying to do your virtual sessions, I don't know. You had mentioned first off that some students seem to have a problem showing their video in certain parts of that. And there's no doubt that video can be an extra strain on the available bandwidth that they may have for you, because it works both ways, the coming and the going, if you want to call it that way. And there's some factors, of course, that lead to that. And we'll talk about that and try to give you some ideas or best practices, or maybe we'll share some, because I'm sure you may have already been through, now that it's been 2 full semesters, 2 main semesters practically, where you probably have figured out some things that work and some things that don't work. So we'll share those. Let me just show you this other video real quick too, that speaks particularly about Wi-Fi.
So Wi-Fi waves are basically just radio waves. So that's the same as the electromagnetic waves you pick up with your cell phone or a radio. But Wi-Fi waves are fairly short. They're only 12 centimeters long, the conventional kind. Compare that to AM radio waves, which are hundreds of meters long. The signal gets a lot weaker as it gets further from the router. And generally, it can't really go more than 150 feet from a single router. They actually get absorbed and blocked by walls and metal surfaces. And so the way you position your Wi-Fi router makes a huge difference in how strong the signal is throughout your house. One thing you definitely want to do is put your router near the center of your house, because it broadcasts the signal out in equal strength in all directions. If you want it out and open, like if it's in a closet, the walls of the closet are gonna absorb and block some of the signal. A good way to think about it is just use line of sight. From whatever position you can see the furthest in your house and you can see the most number of different rooms, that's probably a good place to put your router. You also really want to lift your router up off the ground because the signals can't penetrate some of the materials that make up floors like metal or concrete or cement. And also, the way most routers are designed, they broadcast the wave slightly downwards, so that way you're projecting less of it down into your basement for no reason. A lot of other electronics can interfere with the router signal. Things like TVs, computers, microwaves, pretty much anything that has a motor inside it. So you want to keep the router away from other electronics. Most routers have 2 antennas on them, and ideally you could position one of them vertically and one horizontally. Devices work best when their internal antenna is parallel with the routers, and so most antennas inside laptops are horizontal, but if you're using a mobile device or a tablet, it totally depends on how you're holding it. So that way, if you have one horizontal and one vertical, you have the highest chance of having a parallel match with antennas. If you find that your network isn't working well, you can just go around and measure your signal strength. So there's a lot of different apps that you can download on your phone. You could create a rough map and figure out what you need to do to fix it.
Did you find that helpful at all?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Definitely some things in there that I did not know. I totally understand the wavelength stuff, so that's cool.
We thought you'd get that. We put that in there just for you.
Yeah, I bet.
I was thinking in terms of all the things that that particular video indicated can be eliminated by one thing. What would that one thing be? This is a pre evaluation of your knowledge.
Wait, all the things in that video that
Yes.
were causing problems could be
Yes.
eliminated by one thing?
One thing. What would that be?
Hardwire?
Bingo. Okay, you're done.
Yeah, that was, you've already solved all the
You
puzzles.
aced the exam. Nope, exactly. And we brought Robert along as our subject matter expert from ITS, so he can give us, the real spiel in either tech speak or bring it down a level to a common language.
Well, just standard things that, we look out for when we're having these kinds of meetings, especially working in a remote setting. Bandwidth is a big thing. Anytime you're using Wi-Fi, technically speaking, that can interfere with the amount of bandwidth that you're capable of receiving. So it always depends on, a myriad of things, how much, what's the internet speed that you're getting to your house? What kind of network equipment do you have? Now you said you're outside, and honestly, from what I hear, it sounds like you don't have a problem with being outside. The signal seems strong through the walls and stuff like that, but that's usually stuff that we would kind of try to just have the user be aware of. If you're outside, obviously there's obstacles in between. Another big thing is what frequency range you said that you're familiar with between the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum and the 5 gigahertz spectrum. And now the newer Wi-Fi 6E is going to have a 6 gigahertz spectrum. So that is something that, we'll obviously discuss in the future. I don't think anybody has that quite yet. So just making sure that you are on top of understanding, okay, what is the limitations of the equipment that I'm using? And you would know better than anybody, how far away you can walk from your wireless router or modem and still be fine.
Yeah. We have 1G and and I do know the difference between the 2 gigahertz settings. So yeah, if you want to get further away, you need shorter wavelengths because they are stronger energy. So
yeah, so we usually find that the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum goes through walls and stuff better.
Yeah.
However, the 5 gigahertz is, like you said, higher energy. So it actually is able to facilitate higher data speeds. And
Okay.
in most cases, even behind walls, you'll still experience those higher data speeds, but the it's not able to travel quite as far. So in my opinion, it's usually best to test both. Do a speed test, and that is something that we'll talk about as we get a little bit further down to figure out, okay, well, and it is dependent on, the interfering objects, the objects that are in between you and the router. But do a test for both, being on the 2.4 gigahertz wavelength and the 5 gigahertz wavelength, and figure out which one gives you a higher speed at that particular location. And then you kind of have an idea of, okay, this spectrum is probably better to use in these cases. Now, you said that you have 1 G.
Yeah.
If you mean you have 1 gigabit per second internet, that's actually fantastic.
Yeah.
You could basically stream multiple, assuming you're getting the full 1 gigabit. I also have that. I get about 880 megabits per second, which is still,
Yeah.
fantastic for what we're doing. You can stream 4K, multiple 4K movies, generally speaking, without a problem. And generally they offer plenty of upload with that 1 gigabit package, so that you really don't have to worry about oversaturating your upload. And then, the video where the guy was kind of like distorted and stuff like that, you're generally covered, for those types of fluctuations.
Yeah, I think previously at 11 o'clock, we were talking about also differences in providers, whether you're on cable versus other mechanisms like DSL. And I can say, going back to the discussion about the spectrum that's being used, that I tested between 2.4 and 5 in my house. And from time to time, when I was on the 2.4, I'd always have, something drop, especially when we were watching Netflix or something like that, and it would just sit there and spin. And it was like, it was really quite unraveling, because here we were trying to watch a movie, and every time Lynn went to make popcorn in the microwave, the movie would stop. So those microwaves, obviously at the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, actually interfered with the signal that we had from our router on the Wi-Fi. So those are things to consider too, just as that video did allude to. It's specifically microwave ovens, but a lot of different types of appliances can perform some interference of some kind.
Yeah, they're not terribly far off from from where you are with Wi-Fi. So
yeah. So the things that we think of anyway to try to avoid some of these issues for both instructors and students alike are the big one to most of us seems to be, regardless of what bandwidth capacity you have, wherever you are, it's your home, or if you are in, obviously there's not much you could do if you're actually on McDonald's Wi-Fi, because you can't control everybody else being on McDonald's Wi-Fi. But when you're home, or you're in the parking lot at Monroe campus, wherever you may be getting your signal, you want to make sure that you're minimizing whatever other usage might be occurring on the connection. So even if you are on a computer in the parking lot of Monroe campus, you might have a couple of other things open in other web browsers that are actually sucking some of that bandwidth when you're trying to do a synchronous class with Danielle. So that, it really helps to make sure that you have other things turned off if you're in your home, that other users are, playing chess with a real board rather than doing something on the digital line, and then making sure that even phones, some people use their phones on their Wi-Fi at home rather than their cellular network, and that can also diminish the capacity for your students to have a good experience when you want them to. Taking a test, they're, like you said, the virtual labs, or if they're doing some type of synchronous session with you on Leavey Collaborate or Zoom, or whatever your favorite platform is. And speaking of platforms too, they're not all exactly the same. We don't see any really major variances between them, but anecdotally, we thought that Blackboard Collaborate was a little bit more bandwidth intensive than Zoom when we were talking to people over the last year. So we don't have real statistics to show that, but just what we're hearing from folks, and that seems like maybe more of their students have some difficulty. Sometimes they have a little bit more difficulty than they would if they were using Zoom. And who knows, maybe Zoom's bandwidth shaping protocol that they use on their platform is a little bit better than Blackboard Collaborate. But the one thing that's happening in all the different types of tools that are out there that we're using in education and beyond is that they're all fighting right now to make their things better and better and better. And they all realize, where their comparison or inequities lie with their competitors over here. They're constantly trying to lead the charge. So whether it be Microsoft Teams and their conferencing capability versus Zoom, I just pulled up an article 2 days ago about how, Zoom conquered the world and why. And some of those things seem kind of obvious, but there's some other things that aren't as obvious. So, but it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So it's like anything else, sometimes Firefox is better than Chrome and vice versa. It's just what their latest update does and how well it behaves with everything else. So you always have to be ready for using an alternate sometimes, that plan B that you have to do in the classroom too sometimes, right, Danielle? Damn projector bulb went out. Oh, damn it.
Or a wire came loose.
Wire came loose, that simple. That never happens, does it, Robert?
Never. And it's, yeah.
Well, and actually, I mean, if anybody had invested in Zoom, you probably did pretty well, because they ended up doing, what is it that I saw? I read something that they paid very little in taxes because they ended up giving tons of their income profits into back in corporate bond shares.
I did not hear that.
Yeah.
You can't blame them. That's
No,
probably being pretty smart. You got a windfall.
If they're allowed to do it, that's what they're going to do.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Cool. Generally speaking, too, that not just cutting other people off that are on your line, making sure that your own tasks and stuff are not running in the background that might be hogging up some resources. And those resources could be, we're talking primarily about bandwidth here, but they can also be computer resources too, that sometimes gets in the way of an optimal experience. So it's a good thing to keep in mind as well. Not a bad idea to close any other browsers. If you have some applications running, turn them off. What the heck, it's not like you need them. When you're an instructor and you're doing desktop sharing, you need those applications at times. And of course, whatever, what do you want to call it, embellishment that you add to a video conference, as an example, when you start doing desktop sharing, just like we are right now, that adds to bandwidth usage too. So it can have an impact or a hit on either you or your students, because it's something that is has an impact on both ends when you have a certain amount of stream that's going through the internet from your site to theirs or vice versa. One thing that was brought up this morning and really makes a lot of sense is, it's a secondary best practice because it's not direct, but whatever the instructions are that you're giving your students, make sure that you make them, you outline them, you're really explicit, and you try to get them to pay attention to them. That's the biggest part of anything that we have with our students sometimes. And they should, one thing, that was the other thing about that Zoom crazy call was, there were actually a lot of good pointers in there. Use a headset for better audio, which doesn't have too much to do with bandwidth, but make sure that you get on beforehand and everything seems okay, that you're prepared for a video conference session especially. But Robert mentioned speed test, or there's a couple of them out there, more than a couple probably, but at any point in time, you and or your students could actually check what their throughput is on the internet by using a speed test. I'll show you what that looks like here. This is one of the sites called speedtest.net. And this was the results of what I did this morning, but all you have to do is simply hit the go button, and I might have to actually reset this. one more time. There we go. And it'll actually go through a quick data grab of what's going on. And right now, obviously, this would be impacted slightly by the fact that we're on a Zoom session. Right? And the three components are up here, your ping or latency, the download speed, which you don't have to worry about, and the upload speed, which does come into play with certain things that are being done on the internet, especially a video conference. There's a combination of download and upload. But most of our content is being consumed or absorbed, which is why we typically get higher download speeds offered by our ISPs. Anything you want to add to that, Robert?
No, I mean, that was a pretty good explanation of how to use speed test. I also use speed test for these kinds of things when I want to measure, and that is a good indicator of whether or not you are experiencing fluctuations in your, home internet. I'll find that, especially with cable, I have RCN, I have the gigabit, but I don't necessarily see that gigabit speed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon per se. I might see close to 500, 400, 200, at times. And that is the line being saturated by other users as well. So those are variables that you can't necessarily account for outside of your control.
So question, so the ping value, is that better for it to be higher or lower?
Lower. So that is your latency. That is the time it takes for your device to, they're called hops. What is the time it takes to reach the router to the modem, down the cable to the content delivery network, and then to the server that you're attempting to access. So 13 milliseconds, that's actually a very good ping or latency. The lower it, the better. That means it takes 13 milliseconds for it to go from that device to the server that is serving that speed test.
And back or not?
What's that?
And back is the return as well?
Yeah, I think it's there and then back, because you have to send the response out and then you get a reply.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
Yeah,
Anything under, even generally anything under 50 milliseconds is not really perceivable. You basically wouldn't notice anything below that. So 13 milliseconds is fantastic.
And as you can see, I'm out of your league, both of you. Nothing near a gigabit. But I have to tell you, when we first started on the COVID train, and I was on Verizon DSL, this is now Blue Ridge Cable, and this is, I'll tell you what it is. It's 43.75% better, or well, no, that's not even right. 43.75 times better than what I was getting when I was on Verizon DSL. It's just terrible.
So that's actually not bad though. 43 megabits per second. You can basically, that equates to full speed, full HD streaming for 2 movies. So if you had 2 TVs that were both, 1080p video, you could facilitate both of those with no issue.
Okay.
Yeah, with sitting outside where I am and having my computer going, and Chris is inside doing speeches online with Zoom, and phone probably hooked up to Wi-Fi. My phone's hooked up to Wi-Fi. I don't know if the TV is on, and that's all streaming. I still ended up getting a speed test on my phone that was someplace around, the first one I did, it was like around 100 megabits per second, and subsequent ones were more around 60. But yeah.
So that's kind of where I'd actually like to take those
Sitting
numbers
outside.
and transition to, if you don't mind bringing up that bandwidth portion where it shows the bandwidth that you would need to conduct a meeting per se. Right there. So this is specifically provided by Zoom. So I mean, as long as you're above and you're outside, that you're perfectly capable, especially with 100 megabit per second, speed of 1080p video, 720p, any of those. The big thing here is, upload is also very important. You want to make sure that you also have that upload speed. But I mean, as long as you're capable of getting higher than that, you should not notice any real degradation, build in some headroom for fluctuations, but you shouldn't notice degradation in your video conferencing and stuff like that.
Okay, well, that's definitely good to know.
Forgive me, Daniel, I can't recall. Are you using Proctorio to do any proctor testing?
I was going to try using Proctorio last semester for an exam, but see, the thing is, I have so many things that I need students to actually write down and show me their work, that I didn't have the patience to do it that way, because I didn't want to review video of students showing the camera the work and then uploading the work and making sure it was the same thing. Like it was just too much. I didn't want to deal with it. So I have students actually during the lab period, I've scheduled time during lab periods for them to take exams. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
in
fortunate
person.
that you actually have the opportunity to be on ground with them. So, one of the other areas, of course, have to do with that. So you already got the aced answer here, number G, or letter G. And that's really the basis of what we wanted to discuss. Is there any other things that you have that you've come across that you could offer as far as best practices to add to this list for us?
I don't think there's anything I can come up with at the moment, because, honestly, it's, as timing wise, if it's not a direct connection in the middle of the day, if classes are scheduled to meet in the middle of the day, that's probably really the only big important thing that I could that I could impart on students would be to try and hardwire their computer to the router or to their modem instead of, to the router instead of doing the over Wi-Fi. But other than that, no, I think you've covered everything else.
We'd love to be able to tell them to, have your family do their things at other times than when we're doing our courses with you, but that's not always very practical. And as we've probably found that our students are juggling a lot of stuff at home under the circumstances. Maybe it got a little bit better this spring, I don't know. Are you going to be in the science cluster today, Danielle?
Yes, I am. So I'm not going to I won't be at because there was also a Monroe campus meeting scheduled today at 3:30, but I cannot attend that because of the science cluster meeting. So we have a few things to
I'll
discuss.
see you there.
I'll be in that one, yeah.
Too.
All right, cool.
Anything else we could help you with? Do you have any other direct questions?
I can't think of anything right now. So, but I'm sure if I come up with anything, I will definitely reach out. So I appreciate it.
She's in the better portion of, home users with their internet connections.
Yeah, absolutely. But she's got to deal with other people that may not be. So that's
Very true.
part of this as well. Trying to see how we can minimize the strain on our students too.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a few that definitely have some issues with their connections dropping out and such, and could all be about router positioning.
Yes. I mean, there are other avenues that students can kind of take as well. It's usually hard for me to kind of recommend this, but for example, I have unlimited data on my phone. If one, internet source is congested or doesn't necessarily provide what they need, options today are, 5G is rolling out. Now, most students, their plans and stuff are paid for by their parents, but some students, fully have access to high-end cell phones, which may offer better internet communications than what they have at their house. Just another avenue to look into.
Right, yeah, and that's the other part of it then too, is how much can they actually afford to pay for their plans, depending on what their Well, depending on one, where they stand with, life in general and then what their priorities are,
Absolutely.
you know.
It's all dependent. And like I said,
Mhm.
that's one of those things where I might not necessarily recommend that in all cases, but if there's no other options, my home internet is terrible, and a cell phone with hotspot data might be the trick in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that, and I have also suggested to students on occasion that if they're able to do so, instead of staying at home, if they can get away from home and go to campus, to do that, and they can find a place on campus to be able to log in for their courses and do their work and such if they need access that's more reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to throw that one down here. Thank you. I didn't actually put it in the list yet.
Came up with
I
one.
think what we do know here is that we can give you guidelines, you can give your students guidelines, but there's so many variables, and you can't tell them everything. And if not this, then that, etc. But I think collectively, if they do a number of things, they can improve their situation through the process of trying these best practices, and in some cases grouping them to get the best bang for the buck, if you will. So hopefully that's helpful to you.
Yeah, I mean, this has been great.
Thank you. Are you going to stay outside until 3:30 now?
Probably. I may have to go get myself a little something to eat. I didn't eat anything for lunch yet. A little hungry, but other than that, yeah.
Okay.
Chris says
All
hello.
right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Chris has come outside down now too, so she's waving.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Robert, again for being our subject matter expert. And
Yes, thank you both, all three of
all
you.
right, Sarah is a
Glad I
gamer
can help.
too. So I don't know, Sarah, you have anything else to add on the gaming perspective?
Not in particular, unless sometimes it helps to lessen the demand on the CPU of your computer by closing out of background tasks. And I think we might have covered that one because it is on your list, but that was mine this morning.
Yeah, that's what I got on my list.
Yeah, I've noticed on occasion that my, because I was in another session with Sarah some time ago, dealing with videos and just like creating video content and some really basic things for editing of video content. And I've noted that at times when my movies are more than say 3 to 5 minutes long. So, you're going up to like 30, 45 minutes at times.
Wow.
And,
You're gonna start producing short films, huh?
Pretty much. I mean, because sometimes they're lab videos to help with times that, if a student misses something so that they can still view something,
Yeah.
Although I'm not a fan of virtual labs, like I said, there's also no room for making up lab time in person. So, I have noticed, for instance, that my computer will turn that fan on and start really working harder.
Yeah, you notice when it happens, right?
Yeah. Are there any, actually, this is like a random question, and then I'm pretty much done, and it's not on this topic at all. Are there any kind of external devices to help increase computing power with RAM or anything like that?
That can kind of depend. External for RAM, not really. I mean, depending on if you have a really slow computer, you can do something called Windows Ready Boost. That's specifically, yeah, you're probably nothing for Mac that I know of.
Okay.
With Mac, it's a little bit more difficult because they want you to upgrade most of the time.
Right. I mean, I'm happy with my Mac. I just was
Yeah,
curious
of
in
course.
general.
Not externally. I mean, depending on the Mac as well, there are things that you can potentially upgrade the RAM. Sometimes if you're very technical, you can do it yourself, but
Sure.
you definitely have to look specifically at the model that you have, look online, see if it is capable of doing it. And
People
honestly,
tends to frown upon that.
yes, yeah, you know,
Yeah. Especially if it's still under warranty.
yes,
Mhm.
yeah. A lot of the newer ones, unfortunately, the memory is soldered, so
Right.
it's kind of a once you buy it, that's the condition it's in.
So unfortunate that they do that.
Yeah.
I would
tell us
I would say
about
so. Yes.
it.
Because I've upgraded my parents' PC and such before. They're, you know, whether it was a laptop or tower and everything, and not a problem, but yeah. Anywho, okay. Just curious.
Oh, good question. Thanks.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, everybody go and have a good rest of the sunshiny afternoon. And
right.
we'll see you on
You
the
as well.
next session.
Yep.
Yeah,
See you then.
Thanks you all again.
Okay. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.